Both streams are up. Check Facebook. Come over to here. And we are live. I gotta manage it from there. Give it comments and everything. I think we got viewers coming in now, I think. Give it a little bit. Fun. Well, I think we're live and ready to go. Let's get into it. So, everybody, for those of you guys that don't know who this is, don't you like promote derbies or something along them lines?
Just started. We try to promote. Sometimes we get our butts handed to us, but yeah, we try to promote derbies.
How long have you guys been promoting derbies?
I started in 2007, so whatever that makes me, about 16 years.
That would have made me one.
Yeah. Well, I've learned a lot, just like you've learned a lot, I'm sure. But no, it's been good. I started driving when I was young. My dad was a derby driver, and so came up through the sport. And by 2005, 2006, I just said, man, there's got to be more to this. I mean, Mayhem was awesome. All those shows were great. But I was like, we got to get this thing to the mainstream. And so it's been an uphill fight. I mean, we started with arena shows, and everybody said we couldn't do it, including all the arena people. And so, no, we just started hammering down and trying not to kill people and putting a bunch of cars inside buildings that had no business having derbies in them, and it's been fun.
So was your guys' first show at, like, Topeka?
Nope. So our first show was in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so the funny deal is I did not come up with the team show concept. Rob Baker came up with the team show concept, and we actually ran his first team show over in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and it would have been 2005, 2006 timeframe. And they had a really questionable, weird fight at the end of his first team show. And I caught him in the parking lot, and I had never promoted a derby a day in my life. And I caught him in the parking lot, and I said, "Hey, what are you gonna do with this team show thing?" He's like, "I'm done promoting." We've all had this. We all quit. And he's like, I'm done promoting. I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yep." We announced our team show the next day. And so we put it on New Year's Eve, and we started the finals at 12:01 on New Year's Eve in Lincoln, Nebraska, 2007.
So was it an indoor show?
It was an indoor show. Yeah, it was one of the first ones that was put indoors. And again, it was in a smaller arena. We tried a bunch of different things, but we had no idea what we were doing. Again, ventilation sucked. Everything sucked. And so, but the facilities was cool. And so we tried to make it work. And I mean, the fire marshal was there, and they were watching carbon monoxide levels. And I had no idea what was safe, what wasn't safe. We had no clue. We were just, don't kill a bunch of people with derby cars indoors. But no, so Lincoln, Nebraska said basically they outlawed him after it wasn't our show. It was another show that was indoors in Lincoln. Carbon monoxide levels got off the charts. And so they outlawed him for a while. So we moved it to Columbus, Nebraska for 2 years. And then Topeka came on in 2010.
So in between all that, what were the builds like when you guys first started this team show format?
About like what Limited World is now at Blizzard Basher at our show, Super Stock. The full cradles came in probably about year 3 of Blizzard Bash, year 2 or 3. Before then, it was lower cradles. You really couldn't tie anything back. I don't even think we had a lot for tranny braces. Like the bars down the top of the trannies were just starting to become popular, and people were just starting to figure out what pressure was in 2010, 2011. And it would have been about 11 or 12. You'd have to ask Jason and Ryan, but it's probably 11 or 12 when Jason called me and he said, "Hey, I want to try building a new cradle and I want to bring it to Blizzard Bash. Will you let it?" And I saw pictures of it and about crap myself when I seen the pictures of that cradle, because at that point we were all lower cradles, right? And I was like, you know what? I guess we're going to be an innovator and we're going to let them in. And man, the sport hasn't slowed down since. I mean, before that we were doing a lot of different stuff and cool stuff. But man, when ski came in the picture, it changed everything overnight.
So when ski came in the picture, that's kind of when we got the national side and the super heavy builds like that.
Yep. Before that, I mean, we still had the national side, but they were limited world cars for sure. We were having a hard time getting them last through the week. And so once all the bracing came and I mean, long bumper brackets, heavy welds. That's when we could get them to go 4 days. And so in order to get the progressive bracket, we never ran the progressive bracket till probably a 12 or 13. Before then, it was just 8 teams, 4-on-4. Basically, if the winners go to the A side, losers went to the B side. If you won the B, you got to come back to the A. 5 teams in the feature. And so it made for a good show, but it was basically a county fair indoors. And so we said, hey, let's add a bunch of production to this. Let's add a bunch of video. And so then we started pay-per-view in 2012. And so we started all of that. How pay-per-view started on Demolition Derby was we're sitting in Topeka, Kansas. And who the hell wants to go to Topeka, Kansas, right? I mean, it's not a huge draw. It's awesome now. Everybody loves it. It's a great venue, great show. But I mean, it's not on anybody's bucket list. And so when we kept having the show, 2010, 11, I don't know if we had 400 people in the stands. We weren't getting anybody in the stands. And so we just said, you know what? I asked the arena, what's it take to get this thing to the internet? And he said, plug in a video camera. And I said, you got enough internet to handle it? And he said, yep. So I called Stream and I said, how much to stream an event live all weekend? And they gave me a price of, I don't know, $1,100-$1,200. And so we paid for it. We put it out there for free because at that point we were only doing a couple day shows, and it might've been 3-day shows. And so whoever was there was already there. It was an hour before the event started, and we just put it out for free. And we just set up a camera, let it air the show. We had, 8,000-9,000 people watch the Derby. And Mark Klein asked me if he took off with the pay-per-view, and he started the pay-per-view company. And 12, 13, 14, the facility started to fill because everybody got to see it. So at that point, it was the first time that Demolition Derby was actually on the internet, besides Facebook Live and stuff like that. But actually airing it was like 2012.
So back then, what were the car counts like at Blizzard Bash? Was everything filled to the parking lots like it is now?
No, we were probably, because it was shorter shows. We just kept adding days to get up to where it is now. So back then it was probably 200, 250 cars. So that's kind of where we capped it off, but it filled fast. So, I mean, the show filled, it was just less cars. Now, they're running 300 cars or whatever it is. And so it just progressively grew like everything else did. Everything got out of hand. Cars got out of hand. Shows went till 2, 3 in the morning. And so now we're on our side. I won't speak for Blizzard Bash, but on our side, we're definitely scaling all that back. We want people to be able to go out for dinner at nighttime. And, if we can be out of there by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, that's our goal.
So going back to that, so how did you meet Mark Klein originally? Was he just at Blizzard Bash and contacted you there, or how did that all happen?
Oh, that's a great question. He was probably at the first Lincoln show. He'd have been really close. I know he was at Columbus. I'm not sure if he was at Lincoln or not, but I think he might have been, but I'm not sure. I think Mark and I grew just through an event t-shirt and said, hey, you want to come do the event t-shirt? And at that time we had a few different t-shirt vendors, and Mark became our exclusive t-shirt vendor probably in about that same time frame, 12, 13. And he's been my exclusive t-shirt vendor ever since. I don't let any other t-shirts or any other apparel get sold at our shows. Mark has supported us in a lot of different ways, and we try to support him back.
So you've seen Derby Tees and Derby Nation and all that grow from the very beginning then?
100%. Yeah, we were part of a lot of it. Yep. Derby Nation for sure. We were part of all that. In fact, I'll tell you a fun story about Josh Decker and Chris Marcourt. So these two yahoos call me and they say, hey man, we want to come out to Blizzard Bash. I can't remember who called who. I think they called me and just said, hey, what do you think? And they were trying to get this company going. And I said, man, I think it was the second year we did this pay-per-view thing and we were still trying to figure it out. And I said, man, I'd love to have you come out. I can't hardly pay you anything. I mean, like, the show's broke. We're losing a bunch of money. I know you're going to lose a bunch of money coming from New York. And oh my gosh, I don't know what the hell these guys pulled up in. But it was like a screw, something tiny car. I mean, equipment just packed to the gills, like falling out the windows. And I was like, oh my God, what did I just hire? And these guys, I mean, they flat hit it out of the park. And they were with me the whole time when we were down at Blizzard Bash. So they started the personality side of the pay-per-view. And so we just all grew together and we all just kind of developed pay-per-view together.
Did you ever think that pay-per-view would get to like this big in the future?
No, we really didn't. It really was a way for people who couldn't come just to be able to watch the Derby. The fees were a lot less then, but the production was way lower. I mean, you take a look at the We Crash TV side now that we have started up here at Gold Rush. I mean, the guy who owns that company, and of course we're part of it, but the guy who owns a majority of everything is ESPN for the last 7 years on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, done the last 4 Olympics. I mean, we're bringing in people now that are like, this is going to be a 6-camera shoot and this and that, but they got to learn Demolition Derby too. Gold Rush, it's pretty rough Wednesday night. So we got our butts handed to us a little bit, but by Friday and Saturday, he had our wit. Well, no, they're a great crew, but yeah, the amount of dollars that's being spent on equipment. You walk into Mark's trailer now, it's gorgeous. You know, his pay-per-view trailer is amazing. The equipment that these guys are bringing in on our cruise, on the We Crash cruise, are crazy, but it's what's going to elevate the sport for sure.
So what made you go with We Crash TV over Derby Nation for Gold Rush?
I wanted to bring in a different look, and I wanted it to be more like a Sunday Night Football type deal. Mark and their crew is awesome, but they're doing it for a lot of different people, and we've always wanted to set ourselves apart a little bit. So I went out and got people that this is what they do for a living. This is their job. So I went out and found one of the best streaming guys in the country. What Colin Witt knows is crazy. I mean, and Mark's guys may know all the same stuff. I don't get that deep into it. I've just always said, Mark, that's your world. I'll stay in my world. And so we started this thing, and I called Mark before I ever did it and just said, hey, this is the direction I'm going. This is what I want to do. And so now he's built a full UD store on the t-shirt side. We started into pay-per-view a little bit, but our pay-per-view is going to be, I mean, it's high end. It'd be tough to pull off at, county fairs and stuff like that. So it's a lot of high end equipment and all that kind of stuff, but just a little bit different look. And again, the more sides we can hit the mainstream from, the better chance we're going to get seen. So I don't care if Mark gets it, we get it. It doesn't matter if we can just get this to the mainstream.
So in a way, you're trying to basically create the ESPN of Demolition Derby in a way.
In a way, yeah. So basically that's, we announced our Wheelman last year, and it was the first time in years. People have XDDL tried it before. Different people have tried it in the past. But it was the first time in years that people came together for a true national championship. When you have 7-8 events, all, you got to be in your top 3 or the Mad Dog to even qualify. And we had 28 people qualify, 24 people showed up, which is crazy out of all the states that we had. And then those guys finished that heat in 50 minutes. So that's what we're trying to do, is get either a point series, you have to qualify, progressive deal. And so we're following the format of a lot of other people who have been successful in other sports. Because right now, Demolition Derby can go 100 different ways. So let's look at a bunch of people who have been there before and done it. And so we're copying a lot of that kind of stuff, but we have long production calls every week and talk about, what can we do with this? What can we do with that? How do we get to sanctioned rules? How do we get to this? How do we get to that? So Demolition Derby is pretty fragmented. And that's what we've sat down at Discovery Channel. We've sat down with a lot of the major networks, and they've all said, your sport's so fragmented, and I don't care what part of the country you look at, you all do it differently. Until you can bring some of this together, we're not interested. So if the drivers want to make the money the drivers should be making, we got to figure out how to get this sanctioned, governing body, whatever that looks like. I don't even know what that looks like, but those are the conversations that everybody's trying to have on the backside.
So you think that if everybody can come together and make something like the Wheelman Nationals, which was obviously a big unified, I was surprised to see that when it first announced, because nobody ever works together in the Derby community.
Yep.
So you think if we can basically expand on that to a bigger platform, that's the key to getting this on TV and inside in the mainstream world?
I think it is a portion of it. I think getting the driver profiles, the driver personalities, their backstories, get America to fall in love with the drivers. There's 10 different things that have to happen. I think that's an important one, but I don't think it's the only one. I think there's so many things that go into getting this to the mainstream and again, this is not to put money in a bunch of promoters' pockets. This is how do we get the drivers the respect that they need and deserve so that, a few of these can do it as a living. A few of these can, Wheelman, they didn't have any entry fee. They all got paid $500 cash when they passed tech, and they ran for $40,000. That doesn't happen in Demolition Derby. Drivers don't get paid to come. If we can get that is now the mainstay, that's just what happens at every derby that matters. Now we're getting somewhere. If drivers go, hey, if you qualify for this show, you get $1,000 to come run my show. Great. Every driver gets paid $1,000 when they pass tech. Boom. Now at least their fuel's covered, their families are covered, and it makes it a lot easier instead of, all of us doing this in the garage, paying big entry fees, and then hoping to God we get some type of money out of it.
So real quick before I forget, how did you manage to keep the Wheelman National heat under 3 hours? Because when I saw that driver's list, I think me and everybody else was like, well, that's gonna be 3 hours, easy.
Yeah. I think TJ said it best the other night when TJ said it's the drivers. People come with an expectation, and we have the same expectation on the drivers. They know that, and we explained to them. I had Brian Bray is my production guy. He come in and explained to them, guys, if you ever want this to be something, we can't go 3 hours tonight. There's no way. We have to get this done. And honestly, it's why we're being looked at by the people we're being looked at from is because the drivers got it done in under 50 minutes. It's like 50 minutes and 52 seconds. And so that's not even stopping for red flags. That's green flag to checkered flag. And so, for them to get it done under 51 minutes, I had it guessed at about an hour 20 if we pushed them. And they all wrecked their cars. It wasn't like it was a pushing contest to push them out. They wrecked their cars. Now, there were some points in the middle that they were feeling each other out, which is fine. But at the end of the day, they all knew what they needed to get done. And, I think the biggest thing, too, is getting a good mixture of drivers. You got a mixture of drivers from out west that love to drive hard. You got guys in the Midwest. They can drive either way. If you let them go 3 hours, they'll sit in that car and they'll go 3 hours. If everybody else is going to do it, they're right there. I've driven. Scotty, you've driven. We've all driven. If this thing's going to last, I got a bottle of water. I can go all night, too. So we've all done it. So getting a good mixture from across the country that didn't have a lot of relationships was fun because a lot of these guys they knew each other by name, but they really didn't know each other. And so there wasn't a lot of deals done, and they just went and wrecked them.
Do you think that the heaviness of the build played a factor in that too?
I think it played some, but I've seen, this is not a shot at Taylor. I love Taylor, but I've seen bone stock cars go for 4 hours. I've seen heavy builds go for 3 minutes. You watch our national finals team show 4-on-4. It might've lasted 9 minutes. For $75,000, it was 9 minutes and done. One of the best features we've seen because we just got it. We got it done. So I don't think the build has a lot to do with it. I think it may have some to do with it, but a lot of it is just setting an expectation on the drivers. And again, Derby Icons may run one way, we run a different way, and that's all what works in their regions and what works for them. But in our derbies, we will push them hard. We put up a 20-minute time clock at Pecatonica. And last year, and the guys at Midwest Massacre, the guys who got out of that first heat were exhausted because you had 5 major teams in that first heat. There was a lot of good drivers and 5 pretty nationally recognized drivers in that first heat, and they got her done right at 21 minutes. And so if you push them hard enough, they'll get it done.
So how do you define the limit where you push them? But do you think it's possible to push them too hard to where they just say, you know what, no, this is going to be 3 hours? Do you think that's a case scenario that could happen?
You hope that you don't put each other in a bad situation, because if we're pushing hard and they decide that they're going to run a 3-hour feature, your only option is to go break sticks. Then you're not going to get those drivers back. Everybody's going to get upset. I get upset when I get my stick broke for not hitting. I've had it happen to me many times. And so we've all been there. So we know that that's where it is. And they know where that fine line is. And they've seen us break sticks. We've broke sticks before that were controversial or that were whatever. We've been put in those tough spots, and we haven't been put in those tough spots the last 2 years. And we really appreciate the drivers for that, because if you get put in that spot, it really sucks to have to make that call.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing basically is that the most important part to keep these fast-paced shows for this huge money is to have the respect from the drivers and the promoter side. Does that sound about right?
It's got to be mutual on both sides. Absolutely. We understand what it's like to be in their shoes. They understand what we're trying to achieve, and we both just talk about it. Before we ever go on the track, our drivers meeting with those guys is wide open. If you think I'm full of crap, tell me you think I'm full of crap. I'm fine with that. Let's talk about it. But here's what the expectation is for tonight. And if everybody's good with that, then everybody here agrees that that's the way we're going to go tonight. And, it's like TJ said, you just hope the drivers do it. Because they could all just drag their heels in and no problem. Then nobody is going to sit at home and watch a 3-hour feature. I'm sorry. Watch any major show that runs that long of a feature. 3/4 of your crowd is gone by the time you get done, and nobody even gets to watch the checkered flag. And so, at the end of the day, people want to come to see people crash. They don't care how loud your motor is. They don't care how long you last. They want to see cars wrecked, and that's what they're after. So it's a fine line because drivers have so much money in these things, and the only way to get it back is by winning. So it's a tough deal, but we all try to work together to make it happen.
So is that part of the reason why you make the track so hard at Blizzard Bash and even at Gold Rush too, where the track is so hard you only really have one way out because the track's going to beat you if you're trying to sandbag in a way?
If we can get the track hard and the berm's high and the berm's hard, the excuses are gone. Now it's we just didn't want to drive. Or the bad thing is now that we're fighting is hard tracks tear up steering. So now everybody doesn't have steering, which just makes it go longer. So we're finding solutions to all that because the cool thing was, hey, we got to make these cars last, right? Let's put big hump plates on them. Let's slam them down to the ground. Cars are going to last longer. Well, crap, now everybody's driving around no steering. Okay, let's get these cars back up in the air. Let's get rid of the hump plates and let's let them come into the back end. So that's where the sport's going to keep evolving. Is now do we want to go around with a bunch of cars with no steering? Nope. Okay, how do we do that? We got to get them back up in the back end, right? And so those are the conversations we're having right now is how do we get them where they need to be so that 3/4 of the cars leave with steering, not 3/4 of the cars leave with no steering.
I get you. So going off of that, is that part of the reasoning why you had the hump plates or spindles rule for the national side?
We wanted to mix it up a little bit. And the biggest thing was when we had Blizzard Bash, we had it as a builder's class. Find the gray area, build to the gray area. We're fine with that. If you break the rules, we're going to cut your car. If you hide it and break the rules, we're going to load you. And so it was a fine line of where they were at. And so we brought back some of those rules on purpose. And it was fun to see what some of those people did. You take a look at a 62-inch cross member. There isn't a car out there that needs a 62-inch cross member, right? What do most people do? Cut it off and put it in. Not everybody. Some people got pretty creative and used all 62 inches of that cross member. Maybe they put a bow in it. Maybe they did this. Maybe they did that. So there was a lot of cool stuff that people came up with, and that's what we want it to be. We don't want all cookie cutter cars, but on the other side of it, we don't want you to get crazy either. Just because it didn't say you couldn't put a 4x4 from one bumper to the other bumper doesn't mean you can't. So, it's at the top of every set of rules we have. If it doesn't say you can do it, don't. Because we don't want you to get creative in your own mind. We want you to build within what the rule set is. But that's why we did it. We just want to see what people would bring.
So how do you regulate the in-between right with that?
Yeah, if somebody builds in the gray area and it's, there's times that people build in the gray area and it's going to hurt the show. We had a car one time come in and it said that the gas tank protector could only be so wide, but nobody said it had to have a gas tank protector. So they built their gas tank at a 1/2 inch whatever, and it was hump to hump in the back seat, right? And you're telling me there's not a bladder inside that? Nope, no bladders inside there. It's all just gas. Yep. Okay, number one, you're insane for doing that because if you break a seat, you got a mess. But it did not break the rules. But what it did do was it hurt the show. So we had to work with them to get it back to where yes, it was built in the gray area, but it still was going to change the show. So if it's going to change the show, we asked the drivers to work with us. But everybody said at Tech this year at Gold Rush, there was different things on a lot of different cars. And the things that, you take a look at, there was no length on the inside body mount plate. There was a length on the top one for your body mount, but there was no length on the inside. So what they did is they just cut all those down to 5 inches. So there was some that came in, 30 inches long on the inside of the frame rail, and they were tied in from bolt to bolt, which makes a huge difference. But so what they did is they just said, hey, to make everybody fair, we're just going to cut all these down to 5 inches. Even though the rules didn't call it out, the rules also didn't say you can do it. So let's cut them down. So that's kind of what the guys do, is just use their best judgment. But if somebody beats a rule and it's not going to change the show, absolutely we'll work with them.
Real quick before I forget, how did you guys fix the problem with the gas tank from hump to hump? Where was the solution found with that at?
Well, the funny thing was it may have had a bladder on the inside. And so what it did is in the first, what we did is I think we pushed a bunch of sheet metal away from it, and we might have trimmed up the corners a little bit to get it to where the gas wasn't going to get affected. But basically what it did is it broke loose in the first heat, and they had to find their own solution at that point because gas going everywhere. And so they did it. But it's amazing, some of the creativity. I mean, if you see some of the pictures of the old ski cars, they were absolutely crazy. I mean, they would come in and you just shake your head going, what's it going to be this time? Because and then one time they'd come with their bumpers with no faces on their bumpers. All you could just see was all the gussets. I'm like, Jason, you're not going to run that. He goes, I know, but I'm sure going to. I mean, it used to be a lot of fun down there and a lot of creative stuff. And there's still a lot of creative stuff going on. I mean, you can look at, Team Kansas or any of those guys' cars. They're still getting, still doing creative stuff down there. But I really like the builds that we had at Gold Rush, and the builds were hard. They were a lot less than the rules, but I think they held up extremely well for the weekend. And, we weren't blowing them in front of the A-arms. We weren't doing nothing crazy. The cars were repairable, and the guys fixed them. We got every team that was invited at Gold Rush last year. They got a tent. And so we put everybody in 40 by 60 tents, and they repaired their cars, and it was great. It was a huge party all weekend. It was a lot of fun.
So what was part of your reasoning behind spending all the extra money to get all the tents and do all those extra gestures for the drivers?
I got a 21-year-old son who likes to take care of the drivers. No, it was Chris came up with the idea. He said, Dad, if we want the best drivers to come, we've got to take care of them like they were the best drivers. And so what we did is we went out and invited 14 or 15 teams. 11 of them came. We lost 2 or 3 teams because of the wheelman. 2 or 3 of the teams just said, hey, man, we're going to run the wheelman instead. Bobby Whitaker, some of those guys that were going to run in the team side decided just to run on the single side. And so what we did is we just said, hey, what is one thing that we really would have appreciated because in 2019 we ran Blizzard Bash. Chris and I had a team, and we ran with Austin Adams and with Nathan Gill down there. And we just said, hey, we got to experience it. What was some of the things that we would have really appreciated? So that's kind of where the tent thing came from, was if we put up these tents, and again, any big national publisher or production company looks at that. We basically built a tiny town in the middle of Rapid City. And if you've seen the pictures from it, it looked super cool with all the tents out there. And it gave all the drivers somewhere to hang out at nighttime. They all had their heaters on. People were going from tent to tent. The cops left us alone as long as they were drinking inside the tents. And so everybody just had a great time. And TSL, we had a tent just for the Track Shot Live guys. And they brought all kinds of food and alcohol. And it was just a fun party all weekend long. So that was the goal, was to keep everybody there in a comfortable space where we only get to see each other a couple times a year. Let's all just hang out and party. There's no sense in all scattering to different hotels. So we kind of brought the party to the parking lot.
So you basically gave all the drivers a locker room. Like if it was an NBA team, you gave them a locker room, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And we did it for the 11 that were invited. We didn't do it for all 16 because we had to move up 5 of the qualifying team. So we didn't do it for everybody, but we did it for the 11 that were invited. And that is something that we're, working on for next year is, who gets tents next year? How do we do that? And so we're working on that. But just in those 11 tents, it cost us $42,000 to rent those tents, have them put up. And we did not charge the drivers one dime for those tents. And for those 11 teams that were invited, they did not pay an entry fee. They had their tents provided to them. And we paid out $100,000 in the national bracket.
So, two things going forward. So somebody asked in the chat a little bit ago, is the spindles or hump plates rule going to change? And your son Tyler said hello in the chat. That's pretty much what's going on down there.
My 11-year-old's watching. That's scary. If you want to know what really goes on with UD, bring him on. No, I'm just kidding. Don't bring him on. I'll tell you. He'll tell you all the secrets. I don't know what's going to happen with that. We had a few drivers get together one night, and we all just kind of sat down and talked. And we're going to call through every team over the next 2 weeks, and our bone stock team, compact teams, national teams, qualifying teams, because we want to know what they want. We don't care what the rules are. We tried some different things. And again, those rules there with the spindles and the hump plates, that was all approved by the teams. They got to see them well before they ever went out. We threw them onto an advisory board. We said, this is what we're looking at. This is some of the stuff. And a few of the teams, a few of the teams that were invited were like, yeah, that's stupid. We're out. Okay, great. But it worked for the majority. I don't know that the drivers are going to want to do that. I got a feeling you're going to see hump plates get really either cut down, go away, or rear bumper height is going to come up. I just have that feeling that people are done with the losing steering. Even the drivers don't want to see it anymore. They're all tired of it. Everybody's bought enough steering boxes to last them a lifetime at this point.
So going to the steering thing, what do you think the main difference is? Is because, like, if you watch one of the stocker classes compared to the national side, it doesn't seem like any of the stocker classes have that main problem with losing steering every time they pull onto the track like the national side. So why do you think that is?
I think it's a bunch of different factors. I think the spindles, it's really tough to get all your angles right in the spindles. And so I think a lot of guys are fighting ball joint angles and all that kind of stuff. And so I think we're fighting those. I think the tracks are really sticky with an 8,000-pound car versus a 4,000-pound car. And so when we're in a corner and you're turning hard and you're whipping that car to bring it back around and you're pushing 8,000, 8,500 pounds in a car, that's a lot of pressure on all the steering components to keep them done. Again, we're holding those spindles on by two ball joints, one top, one bottom. That's all, and that's what's holding them on. And so I think that's really tough on them. And really, it's the back bumpers with hump plates on them. They can slam those boogers down to, 12, 13, 14 inches after they've been run once, and they're just eating the steering off from them. I mean, that bottom ball joint the top ball joint can only take so many hits directly on the tire, especially if that tire's turned at all. If you're square to the hit, you might have a chance of the tire bumping up on top. But if you're turned at all and they catch an inside of a wheel, it's ripping off everything. And so I think with the limited weld, you don't dare slam them to the ground because you're going to blow your humps. So they keep them up high enough. And again, the thought on the national side is if you can't hit it, you can't bend it. So everybody keeps the back ends down because if you can't hit them, you can't bend them. So they keep them down low, and everybody's got straight frame rails all weekend and no sheet metal. And it's just, it's ugly derbying.
Do you think how important do you think the tire choices are out at that show?
I think they're super important. I think, you go with a wider tire, you got a lot better chance, but the narrow tires give you the height. And so you see a lot of 550s that are just, if you're going to run a 550 on the front with spindles, a lot of times you're going to see them turned inside out. I mean, we see wheels turned absolutely inside out where there's no way they're going to hold the tire on. And so a lot of times it's the wheel failure that's giving these guys fits when they're blowing tires. A lot of times it's not the tire failure. A lot of times it's a wheel failure. And I know when we ran Blizzard Bash in 19, I'll bet you we turned 5 or 6 wheels completely inside out. We did it with 23s. We did it with 550s. We were just having a heck of a time keeping them from blowing out the inside. And so I think it's important. And, I think some of the guys that are going back to a little bit taller tires, squishier tires, and not just rock solid stuff are having a little bit better luck.
I get you. One thing in the chat someone brought up was, how do you come up with the funds for all this with giving the drivers free entry fees and the tents for all that stuff? Because on this side of the coast, at least, it just doesn't seem like that's the case.
We invest a lot of money. We knew we were going to lose a lot of money at Gold Rush in the first year. Our goal is to attract the right attention to where these drivers can be paid this kind of money. I love what's going on right now because you got us and Blizzard Bash and everybody's pushing everybody right now. Competition is a great thing. The drivers are going to win because nobody would have gotten free tents a couple of years ago. Even when I ran Blizzard Bash, I wasn't going to give away free tents. Why would I give away free tents? Now we have to give away free tents to set our show apart, or you got to pay more prize money, or you got to feed the drivers. I mean, we had free food in the parking lot almost all weekend long, plus the tents, plus, I mean, our payout, and this is what's crazy, is you watch most shows that we do, entry fees to payout are pretty close. I mean, we get them pretty close. And, we may invest $10,000, $15,000. At Gold Rush, it was $192,000 in payout, $23,000 in entry fees. So then you have tents on top of that. And then you have the rental of the place. Then you have dirt. Dirt is a huge expense. And so we had to go find a brand new dirt contractor here in Rapid City. So by the time you get done with it, you got a pretty good investment by the time it all gets said and done. And, you hope that when you're starting a new company, you always invest money and you hope that you can get a return on it someday.
So is the competition factor, going back to that, is that one of the reasons you guys put the show right before Blizzard Bash?
Well, I'm going to say yes and no. If we're going to be completely transparent, yes and no. The tough thing, and Tim and I just had this conversation. I called Tim after Blizzard Bash, told him great show. And he's like, man, what weekend you going next week? You got to get them away from each other. I said, Tim, I got the same problem you have. There's only so many days that I can have the new arena, the old arena, the convention center. The hockey team has to be out of town. They cannot be in town because I need their parking lot. And they can't put anything in the theater because I need that parking lot as well. So to be able to take every building that this organization has, trust me, we fought like heck to try to get a March, April show here. They were like, you don't have a chance. We have home and garden shows. We have state basketball. We are this western side of South Dakota. They do every event for western South Dakota. So they said, there's no way. We would love to. We love your event. You don't have a chance in heck. So they have 2 weeks out of the entire year that would work for us. The one that we're doing and one in June. Outside of that, we'd have to give up buildings or we'd have to give up parking lots or we just have to really cut down our numbers.
Because the show's too big at that point to do any of that.
The show's too big. Yep. And we're running that with other cities. I mean, right now we're trying to, we've got bids out with 3 different arenas because our goal is to move the team show to March or April. And then we're going to keep this as a big singles event out here in November, out here in Rapid City, and trying to find a facility that's got those dates open in March for everything we need. Number one, think about any new arena. They don't have parking lots around them. What do? They put parking garages all the way around them to save space, right? So all the new arenas are out. We can't use any of them. So now we got to find an old arena that has the ventilation and all the systems we need to make it work. So that the facilities are tough to find. Then you got to find one with open dates. So it's a trick. I mean, we have a company that works on this for us, just trying to find the right facility for us and honestly, we're looking for 25. We're not even looking for 24. If we can find something for 25, then we'll start building that show out. It took us 2 years to build out Gold Rush. We had this contract signed 2 years ago.
So that's is that one of the reasons? Because I'll be honest with you, I never even knew Rapid City, South Dakota existed. So that's
right,
which makes sense why it was out there. So you mentioned you talked to Tim. Are you and Tim like friends, or how does that all work between you guys?
I would say, I don't know about friends, but I basically called him and said, hey, I had an issue at my show. It looked like you had an issue at your show. And so just want to talk to you about it. And so it was a common problem that we had. So we talked about that. And then we just go into different stuff. And so I wish no ill will on Blizzard Bash. I started it. I think it's awesome to see where it's at. I mean, he's still putting a lot of people in the stands. And so I think it's great. And what I keep telling everybody, I hope these 2 shows keep going back to back forever because more people are going to come watch them. Why? What did Tim say right after a show? You just wait till next year. I've never heard Tim say that before. You just wait till next year what we've got in store, right? We're saying the same thing on our side. Just wait till next year. We're going to blow this year out of the water. What does that do? That's good for the drivers. It's good for the fans. It's good for everybody. It's making these promoters compete to another level. That's honestly, I think it's how we're going to take the sport to another level is you put, TJ and Taylor and Destructive Behavior and us and all these different people and Frankie Guy and Siopas. And you could go on all night. Domination and all the different people who are out there putting on shows. All they're going to do is make each other bigger and better. That's what's going to happen because social media, I get to see everything TJ and Frankie are doing. Right, they're clear on the East Coast. I I've met, I accidentally sent my Frankie at a Blizzard Bash once. But outside of that, I've never met TJ. I don't meet these guys, but I can see everything they're doing and going, oh, that's a good idea. I can make that a little better. Or they're looking at my stuff going, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that too. And that's what's great. John Muse, we used his truck rules. I talked to him the other day and he goes, man, I love that you're using my truck rules. Now I can send somebody to your show. So as these promoters start working more and more together, I think it's just going to help everybody.
So with promoters working together, where do you think that goes to? Do you think that will come to almost all promoters working together? And if that's the case, do you think there will be less shows than there is now?
I think what you're going to have is you're going to have different levels of shows. I think it's just going to be just like our goal is someday make it like a NASCAR. And I know people go, oh my God, we don't want the sanctioning body. We don't want that much control. We don't want to give up our sport. I get that. But I think what you're going to have is you're going to have your local shows, which are just like local racetracks. They do it every weekend and they run their roundy rounds every weekend. I think you're going to progress up to the big shows. And that's how I think it'll possibly work.
So something along the lines of what dirt track is.
Right. Yep. If you go run a NASCAR race, it's the same rules, these same techs, these same guys working together. The track owners are different. I mean, different people own the shows, but everything is the same within that sanctioning body. Now, do I think it's going to get there in a year? No. But do I think the Wheelman may have been a first step towards it? Sure. Did you see Ultimate Derby's logo anywhere on the Wheelman stuff? Not one time. It's not an Ultimate Derby event. It's a Wheelman event. It is promoters coming together. What I thought was the coolest thing is looking around that track and seeing all the different promoters who are standing around that track working together to judge that track. There was only 2 or 3 UD people. Everybody else was from Destructive Behavior, Derby Icons, All In Promotions. Everybody was represented there. Ciopas was represented there. So that was the cool thing, was having all those promoters, and 3 of them had to agree on a call. So if they were going to disqualify somebody and break flags, they had to have 3 of them agree on it. And it was cool to hear all those promoters, because they still had all their people up in the stands too talking. And so I was sitting up with half of them were on the track, and maybe one of our guys would say, we need to break so-and-so stick. Go dead quiet. All of a sudden you'd hear somebody else chime in going, hey, I want to break this guy's stick. Well, one other guy may want to do it, but somebody else goes, hey, I think he's hitting enough. And so that's where the sport, I think, is going to get to, is you put enough smart people in the room, really smart ideas should come out of it. So that's our goal, is if we can. I love the conference that's back on the East Coast. I haven't been there yet. I'm going this year. So I think you keep putting smart people in a room. And I'm not saying I'm smart, but I love to surround myself with people who are way smarter than me, because at the end of the day, I didn't bring in a production crew on my We Crash TV that knew what I knew. I brought in people that are way smarter than I am on production. I am never going to get in a conversation about how many cameras do we have on the track. It is not my wheelhouse, not my thing. They did.
So when it comes to getting all those promoters together, which when you guys did it for the Wheelman National Qualifiers, how hard was it one of the things, a lot of problems that everybody keeps bringing up is the egos. How did you guys manage to leave the egos at the door and move forward with the plan?
I think what we did is we all got together on a Zoom call right off the bat, and everybody just got to talk through what the rules should be, what the format should be, how does it work. And really everybody was just helping each other. And the group of promoters that everybody picked was because they knew that these guys would want to work together. Not that anybody was left out of it. It's just now we're inviting new promoters this year. Hey, do you want to come in? Do you want to come in? And so if some promoters may, and some promoters have already turned us down saying, hey, it's not my thing. I'm not in. Okay, no problem. It doesn't fit for everybody. So at the end of the day, I think you're going to find that the Wheelman may not be the ticket. And I'm not saying it is. It may be just lead to the next thing that somebody else comes up with that says, hey, this may be the ticket. I think we're going to go through 4 versions of something before we ever get to where we want to be.
I was surprised when it was. So I always figured it would be a team class, because the team class obviously has the most attention and the most action. Yep. What made you guys decide on a singles class?
Team shows are super expensive to put on. I can put on a singles event anywhere. Team events are really expensive to put on. Like we talked about, $192,000 in prize money, $29,000, $25,000, whatever it was, in entry fees. Most shows can't afford to do that. So I can't go to 7 or 8 different promoters and say, hey, I need you to put on a team show. But I can go and say, hey, you got a really good singles class. I didn't ask him to run our rules. Taylor ran his bone stock rules, and we grabbed the qualifiers out of there, and they all came. All 4 of those guys came out of bone stock, but they built to the set of rules that was basically a limited weld type of rules. And so that's how everybody got working together. But I think it was just a general respect from the get-go that this, and we weren't toting it as an Ultimate Derby event. Never. It never was. It's got its own website. It has all of our logos on there. No logo is better than the other. And it had its own apparel. It had, when Mark did the apparel, Wheelman apparel stood on its own. So, I mean, that's how we tried to do it, was just leave it as this is just an idea, a concept. And honestly, Chris is my son's the one that came up with it. So he said, hey, Dad, I want to try this. Do you mind if I call the other promoters and try to put it together? And I said, I said the same thing you did, Scotty. I said, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think you'll get them to work together, but sure, if you want to call them and try, go ahead.
So how did your son get involved so heavy with Gold Rush? Was this his idea, or how did that originate from?
So no, it's actually my daughter's idea, so we can blame it all on her. So Chris and Nicole both have ownership in Ultimate Derby, and we were sitting in the stands 2019 at Blizzard Bash. We're sitting up at the top level, just watching, having a great time, enjoying the show. And basically what happened was Nicole looked over and goes, it'd be kind of fun to promote again. And I said, absolutely not. I have zero interest, none. I mean, less than zero interest. I'm not going to do it. I'm out. Nicole, you know what we went through the first time around. There's a lot of days it's a thankless job, and you can do no right. No matter what you do, tomorrow it doesn't matter. And so I just told her, I said, you don't even understand what you're going to put yourself through if you want to do this. And so it ate on all of us for a little while. And she got talking to her brother, and she come back and she goes, what if we do it all together? No one person has to take the hit this year. We'd all do it together. And I said, all right, let's start talking about it. So Whiskey City was the first one that came up. So Whiskey City, we did that one in March of 22. And so that was our first show back in Peoria, Illinois. And it was a lot of fun, but I'm telling you what, I threw both those kids right in the deep end of the pool and hoped that they could swim. And they did good. They learned a lot. Nicole only had a few breakdowns, but Chris gets a lot of the attention because he has all the driver interaction. Nicole runs most of the Derby. And so all the operations, all the registration, everything behind the scenes, all the scheduling, Nicole does all that. At this point, I don't do a ton of it. I just do a lot of the bigger stuff and work with them to make sure that they're got their sides done, and we all have a lane and we stay in it. But Chris was young when he got into it. Chris was helping me build cars when he was knee high to nothing. And he just had a way of seeing things. He could see the cars real well. He could see the things that we shouldn't be doing that we were doing, like everybody does to their cars. It was funny. I tell the story every once in a while. He was probably 11 or 12 years old, and Ryan Songalewski was up on the hoist, and Christopher's walking by, and he might have been 12. He wasn't very old though. And he was walking by the hoist, and he goes, I didn't know we could narrow the back of a car. Ryan turns around and looks at him, and I look at him. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, look, Dad, that piece is cut over left and rewelded. Ryan had to pull his back body bounce that night. And he goes, can you get that kid? Just keep moving him on. But Chris was at a perfect height to see it, and just happened to see it walking by. So he's always been, and Ryan was great with him. Ryan just harassed him the rest of the weekend. But I mean, it was a good learning experience for him. And honestly, he's been around the best drivers his whole life. I mean, going to Blizzard Bash he's been in the inspection line, whether he's sitting on a table, sitting on a golf cart, he never missed watching anything. I see it in Tyler now. Tyler is BMG or whatever the heck, BNG or whatever the heck it's called. He's on there playing all the time. And I mean, he's asking questions. He got to drive his first car last year. Now he wants to be in the shop. So, I mean, the kids don't have a lot of a choice in it, but they enjoy it. So, and they're both good at Chris and Nicole are really good at what they do.
So going back towards the beginning of that story, you mentioned how miserable it was promoting. What drove you guys away from promoting back when you guys basically stopped?
The Chad Markley call. So I don't know if you remember the Chad Markley call.
I was like 10.
Yep. So it would have been 2000. Chad can tell you exactly what it is. 2016. And we had ourselves so convinced the right call was always the right call. And sometimes in Demolition Derby, the right call isn't always the right call. And so Topeka came to us and said, hey, would you put on another event? And we said, no. March is a horrible time of year to put on an event. And they said, what if we put up $30,000 for you to put on an event in March in Topeka, Kansas? That's where Capital City Carnage came from. And I said, okay, but we're giving it right back to the drivers. So like an idiot, I went and got $30,000 in cash. And I put it in a black suitcase or a black briefcase. And we walked it that night right before the feature, right in the middle of the track, and showed every driver what $30,000 cash looks like. And and we had made a couple other bad calls over that weekend, and really we were forcing a show that we weren't really ready to do. But it made it a tough situation. And so it was like there was gasoline already sitting inside that arena, and all somebody had to do was light a match. And what happened was it got down to 5th or 6th place. And Chad had been warned a couple times for hitting, and Chad's a great driver, can drive with the best of them, and he'll go the tempo that he needs to go. And he was pushing his clock, and he was driving well. And I mean, you had Ryan Songalewski out there, Chad out there, Brett Clemens. I mean, there was a lot of good drivers out there. And I'll stop naming them before I forget people, but there was a lot of good drivers out there. And I told my dad, hey, I need you to take Chad on the clock. So my dad put Chad on the clock, and he had him at 1:06, 1:07, and he's calling it out over the radio. And he goes, he's at 1:06, and you have to hit within a minute at our show. He's at 1:07. And I said, if he drives by this car here, we're going to disqualify him. And we broke his stick in 4th or 5th place for $30,000. And I'm not saying he would have won the show, but I'm saying it was a call that when you get down to top 5, you let him derby it out unless it's bad. And we didn't. And we made the call that night, and we learned a lot from it. But when I tell you we had death threats at our home, I was on podcast trying to defend ourselves. I knew that night when I had SWAT at the back door and there were beer cans raining down all over the arena, I knew that night we were done. I just had to build it back up one more year to get it into a sellable situation. But I knew that night I was never going to put my family through that again. So now we make a lot better calls. I'm not saying we make perfect calls. We still are going to make calls, but we learned a lot. And it's not me by myself making the call anymore. All my officials agreed on the call that night, but it was awfully quiet walking out there on the track. And but it was a tough call, and we learned a lot that night. And you know what? When we're down to top 4, 5, 6, 7, you let them derby it out and let them have at it, because they may be at 1:06, but they're just getting ready to turn it up and smoke somebody. And so I mean, it was one of those deals that we learned a lot through that night. But you know what? It ruined a good friendship between Chad and I, and I knew that night that we were done promoting. So I sold it the next year to Tim and to Russ, and it was a great transaction. They come in and they did a good job at Blizzard Bash.
So speaking of questionable calls,
oh God, what did I just walk into?
What was the backstory of like the I should have went to Topeka guy? What was the backstory behind that?
That came up a little bit ago. I knew it was going to come back around, Scotty.
The guy made Facebook famous for that week.
He did. I mean, he made our show famous, not for all the right reasons, but he made our show famous. So I'll give you the whole backstory that not a lot of people know. So you're going to get the whole inside scoop this time. So the first night we did horrible at pay-per-view, right? And I mean, we are getting just lit up on pay-per-view. The second night, I jumped over to the production headset. I left the track headset. So Chris and his guys all had the track headset. Chris, somewhere in there, went off the berm when that heat ended. I couldn't see what happened. I come back and I grabbed a track headset and I said, what's the call down there? And they said that whatever the black team was, Steven's team, won the Derby. And I said, are we sure? Because there's a lot of unhappy people right now. I'm really confident. And the really cool thing about that track is they can replay up in the booth. So I said, hey, let's leave it the call stand the way it is right now. let's go up and replay it. I went up and replayed it. Still didn't have a great angle. Everything still looked like Steven's team won. The drivers brought me a video that was really a much better video. And I'm like, holy crap. We made that a horrible call right there, I think. So I said, we're going to look at it after the show. And so we looked at all of that and basically went back up afterwards, looked at it from 7 different camera angles, knew we made the wrong call. And we went down and corrected the call. And the guys just felt like it took us too long to reverse the call. Then they felt bad for the other team. And so the next day they said that they didn't say anything. They just come out and felt like they needed to make a statement and made a statement and put a bunch of stuff on Facebook that wasn't necessarily true, but I'm not going to get into that battle. But it was one of those deals that, you know what, every driver's got the right to do whatever they want to. And so they were frustrated at us. And the bad thing is the team who basically had the call reversed on them, they were over there helping them repair the cars all the next day. So it's just the whole situation's a bad deal. But again, we probably took too long to make that call. So next year we're going to have what's reviewable, what's not reviewable, and we'll actually have a replay booth that's down with us. I don't have to go to the production room, but it won't be very many things, because then once the word passes that stuff's reviewable, people all over the place can review everything.
And then you just open up to that second row of, Facebook, which they're great at their job. Facebook, they know everything.
They got it all figured out.
Yeah, if we could just put Facebook in charge of Demolition Derby, I think it would be the greatest thing ever,
Or it'd be dead in a year, one or the other.
I was thinking more like a month, but we could see if it could last a year.
Yeah, it won't take very long.
So after you guys made that call, when they went out on the track and did that, did you regret making the call and regret flipping the decision?
Nope, right is right. So if we had 3 different officials all agreed that basically what happened was the one car was sitting here, the other car was into the doors. He pulled ahead and he moved the car 3 times. When he hit the other car, it doesn't say you have to hit with your bumpers. He hit it with a door bar, but he physically moved the car 3 times. So on us, we said that counts as a hit. In the videos that we were looking at to begin with, it looked like he scraped by. He didn't actually hit the car and move it, but it did look like he did move the car 3 times, and it was the right call. So, and some of that was just, a lot of emotion the next day, and drivers frustrated that I think they felt bad about, whatever they said on Facebook. Maybe they didn't, I don't know. But again, at the end of the day, I think it was just a situation that I got enough messages from the drivers of that team that felt bad about it. You know what I mean? So, it's just one of those things that it just kind of, every show is going to have a little bit of drama. So if you don't have it, then it's lingering somewhere.
Just like an unlucky situation, basically.
Yeah. And we had a few of those over the weekend. It was just, situations just kind of got weird. And so, but every event has those. So all of a sudden, something you're not even expecting takes a weird turn, and you just have to deal with it as it comes.
So at Gold Rush, what was putting on that show with it being your guys' first year? What was one of the most difficult things that you guys had to go through with putting that show on?
I think just finding all the new contractors is the toughest part. The dirt contractor, the working with a brand new arena. The arena doesn't know us from anybody, and it's a $140 million arena. It's 2 years old. So the paint's still drying inside the arena, and they're letting us come in and fill it full of smoke, dirt, dust. And the arena is second to none. It is gorgeous. 4 levels. It seats, a ton of people. If you pull out the bleachers, it's close to 11,000 people. Bleachers pushed in. It seats like 8,500. So it's 2,000 more seats than Blizzard Bash. So it's just a big arena. And for them to trust us with their entire facilities, that's a lot. And so, we build that trust all year when we're getting up to it. The dirt people, the hotel people we've never worked with, is hotel registration going to go good? Is it not going to go good? Are they going to get it right? You have 300 rooms rented in town. Are they going to get that right or not? But this is probably one of the smoothest shows we have done. The tent guys got their tents up in time. That's a lot of tents to put up for one crew. And they got them up in time and got them all put together. So just next year, now we can focus on making it a better show, because all the contractors are all coming back. So it's easy just to say, dirt guy, you good? Yep. Hotels, you good? Good. Now we're just rolling.
So when you're so what is it like? So when you go to this brand new arena and you're talking to them and you're telling them this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna smash cars. There's gonna be a lot of smoke, a lot of dust, a lot of dirt. What do they say when it's a 2-year-old arena?
The nice thing is the arena general manager is really good friends with the guy who used to be at Topeka and helped me grow that show. So he did his homework. He did his checking on us. Because you're right. When I say, hey, we're going to crash cars in here at 40 miles an hour. We're going to have fires in the middle of your track. We're going to light off fire extinguishers. We're going to have a mess. It's going to take you weeks to clean it up. But trust me, it'll all be worth it. They're going, what in the heck did we just get ourselves into? But I mean, they were great about it the whole time. We ran into a lot of different things. We tried to use an automatic gate to close off for inspection times. Well, not thinking that dumb thing has safeties in it. So every time somebody'd step in front of it, it just opened back up again. So, I mean, just different things that we learned a lot from their facilities. But they have a 6-foot-high security fence around the whole inspection area and around the whole place where we impound them all. So we've never had that before. But with that comes other stuff. So, I mean, it's just, you just learn that stuff at the facilities. But I'm telling you, our drivers have never been treated with more respect, everybody loved it. Everybody loved the facility.
So, speaking of impounding cars, do you think? Well, obviously, you guys impound cars. Mm-hmm. When it comes to impounding cars at big shows like that, do you think it's more important to impound the cars all night long, or why don't you let the drivers work on the cars all night long?
Drivers don't want to work on the cars all night long. Drivers don't want to. We had one night where everybody on the losing side of the bracket had to work on them all night long, and it's the biggest complaint we have. And we've reworked the whole show, so we don't have to do that again. Drivers love the fact that they leave their cars in impound and they just went to dinner. They'd go take a shower and go to dinner and not have to worry about them. We'd have them out there at 7 o'clock in the morning. We'd be putting all their cars away by 8 o'clock. Everybody was ready to work on them. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we put them back in impound again. And honestly, we ran the show at 4. By 3:15, every heat was lined up. Everything was ready to go. Outside, there's enough room behind there that every heat is lined up behind the building. When we go green flag, it's, okay, bring the next one in, and it was crazy efficient. There was no downtime. Our skid loaders cleaned that track in 2 or 3 minutes, and the next heat was coming in. So that one night, we ran like 14 heats in under 3 hours. So it went really, really well.
Awesome. So going to Gold Rush next year and going even back to this year, what part do you love about putting on that show the most?
It's a great question. I would say what I enjoy the most about the show, this year's show, let's talk this year's show versus other shows, was basically the memorial we got to do with Brady Larson's deal. I would say it was the biggest thing that meant more to me than anything we've ever done in Demolition Derby. Losing a friend was really tough. And so, I mean, we've all lost friends. I mean, Bobby was a friend. A lot of people are friends. We've lost a lot of friends and a lot of people that we shouldn't have over the years. I think back to T-Bone and Tony Atchison and some of the close friends that we've lost. But Brady was just a friend of the whole family, and it happened so close to the show, and he had qualified for Wheelman. It was just a tough situation, but being able to do everything we did for the family, I mean, I feel like we went above and beyond and did everything we could for their family and tried to show as much respect as we could. And it meant a lot to us. But as far as the show goes, being a dad and being able to see the kids pull off what the kids pulled off, watching and getting so many compliments about the kids this year. Last year, everybody's just like, yeah, they're kids, they're trying, they're working hard. This year, it was like, wow, they definitely get some respect. So I think that was really cool. But watching the drivers take a chance on us, coming back to a brand new facility, leaving a show that they had ran forever, coming and building to a new set of rules with new techs, and trusting us enough to bring $50,000 cars and $4 million worth of equipment to a show that those guys had never been to before. I would say that was really cool, is watching them all load up those tents on Monday afternoon and know that the show we had coming was just going to be absolutely insane. And I see in the comments that Taylor Feldkamp said it was seeing him. Definitely not the highlight of the week.
So going back to Brady, I want to talk about that for a little bit just to keep his memory living. How did you meet Brady?
So Brady, I had watched Brady pretty much come up through the sport, running the Montana shows, running up in North Dakota. Even before Brady was running, we'd seen him a lot. The first time I really got to talk to Brady was when Chris ran walking beat down and got second place in a wagon. And Brady walked over, and that show is a tough show. Caleb puts on a great show up in Montana, and it is a battle. And Chris got himself all the way down to second place, drove his butt off, and Brady come over and sat in our pits for a while. And when he left, he said, just remember, this is the last time you get to use the kid card, because Chris might have been 17, 18 years old. He's like, I get to use that card too, but it's gone for me, and it's gone for you now too. He goes, now we're going to battle. And so every show, he just comes over and talks, and we get to talk a lot. And so we run a lot in different areas. We run a lot of the same shows. And if not, we're watching a lot of the same shows. So a lot of times we'd go watch somewhere he was driving. He'd come down and watch Chris drive at Mobridge or Phillip or one of those. And so there was a lot of times we just got to hang out throughout the year. I wouldn't say I never went to his shop and drank beer. I never did anything like that. I wasn't that close to him, but just close enough that he was definitely a well-respected driver. And I mean, all my kids respected the heck out of him. And I mean, he was definitely one of the guys that Chris definitely looked up to in the sport.
That's awesome. So I believe you shared this at Gold Rush, but how did you and your family react to his passing?
It happened on the night of my birthday. And so it was the night before my birthday. I got the call at like 12:15 at night, and it was from Chris. And one of Brady's close friends had snapped Chris and said, hey, Brady just passed away. And so Chris called me at like 12:15. I thought he was calling me because of birthday, going, hey, Dad, happy birthday at 12 o'clock, Not that Chris would do that, but I just thought, well, maybe that was kind of wild. So I seen his name come up, and so I'm like, hey, bud, what's going on? And I could tell he was really emotional. And I said, what's up? And he said, Brady Larson just passed away. And I thought he was full of crap. I'm like, there's no way. Yeah, the kid's invincible. I've seen him do some crazy stuff in a car, burnt the hell out of his fingers, get back in a car, just stuff that, the kid just, almost that invincible, great little driver. And so it took us a little while. And so I think the toughest phone call was calling my 11-year-old the next day. And it's crazy. On my 11-year-old Snapchat, it's still about once a week. You see him put something out there for Brady. He meant a lot to him. It was funny, though, and I told this at Gold Rush, is Brady added Tyler to his Snapchat. And I thought, oh, gosh. Tyler calls me and he said, hey, Dad, Brady added me on Snapchat. Can I add him back? And I thought, oh. And, Scotty, if you ever seen Brady's Snapchats, you'd know exactly why I was going, oh, I don't know. Between him and Ponzer and the rest of those, Workhoven and the rest of those guys, I'm like, oh, Tyler. I'm like, you know what? That's cool. So the next time I see Brady, I'm like, hey, just be careful. Remember, he's 11. But it was just that common respect. So the family really struggled with it. But Nicole took that memorial, and she drew up most of that, and she did all the videos. She did everything. And so she said, hey, this will be something people remember for a long time. So, and she brought the videos down ahead of time and said, you got to watch these ahead of time. You cannot watch them at the event for the first time. And so we went through all that stuff, but it was good. I was just glad we were able to be part of it. It was a complete honor.
I think one of the best parts about Demolition Derby is seeing how we can all come together for stuff like that.
Yeah,
just
it's tough. And I'm not saying Brady was any more important than anybody else that passed this last year. Bobby and those guys are, all good friends. Bobby supported my shows for years. It is so tough losing people in this sport. I know it's a common thing of life. It's going to happen to all of us, but it's a tough thing. But yeah, being able to sit there with, the whole Derby family and experience that together was really cool.
Speaking of this, so in the description of the Facebook stream, it should still be there. There's the PayPal username for Crashing for Kids Cancer. All the money donated on this week's streams will go straight to Benson and his family, which Benson was the Crashing for Kids Cancer kid who recently passed away. His funeral was the viewing was this Monday. Me and my mom went down there, and it was just truly heartbreaking to watch. So anything that goes that, just helps the family out. So if you got some extra money, go do that. Going back to it, so what does the future for Ultimate Derby have? What does the future look like?
We're going to keep adding events, and we're going to keep trying to build out the wheel, man. We're going to keep trying to go towards, a sanctioned set of rules and work towards a standard set of rules across the country is our goal. And I don't care what rules they are. Again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to us. All we do is enforce them. I think that'll lead to, similar techs, similar this and that. Taylor Feldkamp and I have talked about, hey, how about we hire Josh, you hire Chris? Now we're getting cross techs, head techs working together. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that kind of stuff work together. And I know, Frankie, what he's doing with the youth stuff is amazing. We're going to nominate youth kids to go. I'm hoping my 11-year-old gets to go. And so, some of that stuff is what we're focusing on, is just trying to make this sport better, put on the best events we can. And, we've got, we're going to start doing a little bit of consulting too, where if there's a county fair that, Ultimate Derby can only do so many events, it takes, 12, 13 people to go to these events. And a lot of people can't take time off from work and do all that. But man, if they want to hire one or two of us just to come help, man, let's do that. Let's help the sport. If there's something we can do at a county fair, let us know. And we want to start helping a lot more with that kind of stuff. Chris can help with the tech and bring our hoist and show guys what we're looking for underneath there, what they should be looking for underneath there. We can help with the show. We can bring headsets, flags, all that kind of stuff is what we're going to be focusing a lot on stuff. So we're going to be announcing a lot of that stuff over the next few weeks on the consulting side. Not that we do it any better than everybody else. We just want to be available.
So going off of that, how hard do you think it will be do you think that there will be a unified set of rules throughout all promoters throughout the country? Do you think that's a possibility or an exaggeration?
I think it's got to go with a plan. I think it's got to be just part of a plan. I don't think that can be the end goal. The end goal can not be just getting us a unified set of rules, because then how are the cars teched? If I run in Utah, am I going to get the same tech that I get in Pennsylvania? So that's the next goal, is how do we bring a system of people working together towards something? Because I'm telling you, it is the biggest red check mark that we have against us, is we are fragmented, and we don't even call the classes the same. This may be limited weld over here, street stock over there, super stock over here. We all call it something different. So we've got to come up with a standard set of rules and say, this is a premier class. This is a premier, all these different things with the compacts. Is it hobo? Is it bone stock? Is it all those different things? Because you start talking to people outside the sport, they have no clue. They have no idea that these 5 things all mean the same thing. We're just all calling it something different. They're going, oh my gosh, there's that many things? Well, no, they're all the same, but they're really not. So I think it's just, there's got to be a plan for it. It can't be just the unified set of rules is not the goal. The goal is to bring the sport together.
So basically the unified set of rules would just be a part of the plan, in a way.
Part of the plan. Yep.
So hypothetically, if you had all the promoters sit down at one table, what do you think would happen?
We've done it with 7 or 8 promoters. I think it's all going to come together. I honestly do. I think there's enough people screaming for it. I think there's enough people wanting to get there that I believe it's going to happen. Is it going to be ugly at first? Probably. But we all look at our first indoor shows. We about killed everybody in Columbus, Nebraska. Literally, we about killed everybody. We damn near killed everybody in Columbus, Nebraska. So, we have to start somewhere. If we expect perfection out of the gate, none of us are going to succeed. But if we all start working towards something and make it a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal, whatever, at least the sport knows where we're going. So and we'd love to be a part of it.
Go ahead.
I said, we'd love to be a part of it. We don't think our set of rules is any better than anybody else's. We are open to any set of rules out there that makes sense that we can use in our shows. And anybody who wants to work with us and send their text our way, we'll send our text their way. And we are all for getting on the same page.
So basically, the rules doesn't matter. It's as long as everybody can agree on them. So if it's whether it be kicker class, bone stock class, it doesn't matter as long as everybody can come together on them.
Yep. But I think there has to be multiple classes because, there's going to be guys that want to run each class. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, we don't care if there's an 8-inch box ahead of the engine cross member, or there's a kicker, or there's whatever the drivers want. Let the drivers decide what they want, and then we all enforce it. I'm great with that. And I think if we can get to that deal, I think there's going to be different variations across the country. But for the most part, I think we can all come to 95% the same rules. And you know what? At this show, it's if you take a look at what Wheelman rules were, it was our super stock rules, and then we took a little something from everybody's rules. Utah's got a few weird things, so let's throw that in there and see what it does. Taylor does some different stuff out there. Let's throw that in there and see what it does. So I think it went well.
So speaking of Utah, why do you think that everything is so much different from the East Coast to the West Coast? Because they're two different derbies.
Utah's amazing. I think the biggest thing is an expectation from the crowd. The crowd will not put up with driving around. There's 12,000 people in most of those stands. Those things sell out faster than, they sell as fast as Gold Rush registration does. And they fill the stands. They're coming to watch a 2.5 hour event and they're leaving. It's like a movie for them. They come dressed super nice. They're in, their khakis and their shorts and they come dressed like they're going to a movie. They sit down. They don't cheer for the winner. They're cheering for rollovers, head-ons, stuff that's just insane. Those drivers are superheroes. And what's crazy is they have favorite drivers. When a driver takes the track, it's not like when you come to watch one of our shows, a driver takes a track, everybody's just watching them come on, right? Out there, they're all on their feet screaming and hollering. You see a TJ McPhee or a Parker Lazenby or something like that takes the track. Everybody's screaming and hollering for them. It's just a completely different atmosphere, and they get crowd involvement. The crowd's involved. It's wild. It's a lot of fun.
So why do you think that is compared? Because if you go to a county fair, I get booed when I get pulled onto the track.
Right, we do. I get booed whenever I go to anything. But no, I think the biggest thing was it was that way before social media. It's just never changed. And honestly, some of the promoters like to have out-of-state cars come, but a lot of them don't. They are going, hey, keep your driving styles back. We don't want it, because they like their short shows, fast shows. If you have to run a heats feature show, you might get an hour to fix your car if you're lucky. That is if you drew the first heat and they're giving you extra time, you get an hour. And if your car looks, I don't know how many times we've gone out there and went, yeah, that ain't going to work. And it may be, spindle ripped off. Yeah, we don't have enough. We can't do that. And everything else we got to do is put that one back on the trailer. And so, it is just a very fast paced, very, very well run show. Stern Dirt built a great thing out there, and everybody's just kind of going with it. Destructive Behavior is now going. Joker's now building it. These guys just keep that going, and they pay their drivers ridiculous amounts of money to crash. I think Wasatch is over $100,000 for that weekend. There's 3 shows right in a row. That's Wasatch, UTC, and UAB. There are 3 weekends in a row. It's over $400,000 in payout.
So we're going from that. Was that the same type of energy that was out in that show that they had in Vegas?
I didn't go to the show in Vegas, so I don't know. I wanted to go, but I never went to that show. But I think it was similar because they took that West Coast mentality, and yeah, there was a lot of East Coast drivers out there, but they ran them hard. And so I told Frankie on Facebook that I said, hey, we ought to go back out there and start something back up again. But it's a tough environment in Vegas because there's so much competition for the entertainment. To fill the stands, you got to bring them all because you're not getting anybody from town. So there's just too much competition for entertainment in Vegas. So to build a show out there is really expensive, really tough. Can't say it can't be done, but it would have to be a big finals or something like that to pay the drivers to go that far.
So you don't. Why did the show in Vegas stop? Is that part of the reason why?
I believe so. It wasn't my show, but I believe so. I think there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I don't know what all happened with that one. Johnny and those guys could tell you, but that'd be a great question if you ever get them on, because I'd love to hear why they stopped. I don't know if it was the venue. I don't know if it was just not the right fit, tough in the stands, didn't make any money. I don't know what stopped it, but yeah, if you get Stern Dirt on, I'd love to hear that question.
I get you. I try. I think it's in the works. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, Johnny and Gumby are great guys.
So, going from that, how big do you think a Demolition Derby show can get? Like, how big can Gold Rush get? How big can every other show get?
As far as crowd size, money size, what are you talking?
Like in general, like from money to crowd to everything. How big do you think it possibly is to create a derby? Like what is the most amount of car count you can get? What is the most amount of money you can get out? What is the most amount of fans you can get?
Cars. We keep our car counts lower because we want to run a shorter show. So we only have 220 cars or 250 cars that come to Gold Rush on purpose. It fills fast, but we don't want 400 cars because we'll run till 3 a.m. And that's not what the crowd want. I think the way a show is going to get the biggest it's going to be the capacity of the facility. Blizzard Bash couldn't get any bigger. We were turning 1,000 people away in the door on 2015. When I had it, 2015 was the first sellout, and we turned 1,000 people away at the door. So it can't get any bigger. And so now it's not there today, but it's not far off from that today. But you can't, you're only going to be as big as the facilities. Now, are we ready for a St. Louis Dome? No. Candace Freeze and I went out and looked at the St. Louis Dome, 2016, 68,000 seats. The tough thing about that is now you're so far away from the tracks. The track's going to be so small out there. Now everybody's lost that feel because it's a huge football field. And now we're out in the middle of this huge facility and we're a little tiny blip in the middle of a massive concrete floor. So now you've lost the feel. So we got to keep finding these facilities. But I think as big as Demolition Derby can get is multiple shows, us working together, filling these facilities, great pay-per-view. And honestly, get the mainstream to it. This thing highlights on ESPN or show on something else or something like that. That's when the show's going to get bigger.
So, going from that, let's see. Let's read the kind of out of questions. Let's see some questions.
Let me answer the one that Wally asked. He said Scotty asked about the trick or treat thing. That was an awesome event at the Rapid City deal. What was really cool was the Kunkel twins. I know neither one of them are Kunkel anymore, but Carly and Kylie, Dylan Kunkel's sisters. And Nicole built a Halloween event because Tuesday night of the drivers' meeting was Halloween. So they were like, hey, let's open up this up and let's bring the cars in and let's throw a bunch of candy in their trunks and let's have a trunk or treat. And I told Nicole, man, if we get 50 kids in there, I'm going to be so excited. Oh my gosh, the word passed around town. We had about 800 kids come through that crazy deal. I ran and got more candy in the middle of it. I bought out a whole Walmart trying to get candy back here in time. And I mean, like the GM come down and he goes, hey, I don't know how much candy you have, but we go all the way around the block. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, it's all the way around the block. And so, yeah, it was such a cool thing for the city to be able to see the drivers be able to see the city. We didn't know that they had a Halloween party there in the past. And so it's something the city just kind of expected. And so when all the lights were on, man, they were just coming. And it was great. And so that was a really cool event. And everybody circled all night. And then we got to do the heat draws after that. And it was just a really cool way to start Gold Rush. So it was a lot of fun. So
when you saw 800 people there, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
Nicole, what have you done? Honestly, it was, do we have enough candy? Because I knew we didn't have enough candy for all those kids. I didn't know if I believed him, so I went out in the hallway and I looked around the corner and I grabbed a good buddy of mine and I'm like, dude, we got to go to Walmart now. And so we went to Walmart. He dropped me off at the front door, literally filled an entire grocery cart full of candy to the top, ran through, scanned it all. He pulled back up. I threw it all in the back of the pickup. We took off back and filled everybody's trunks again. And it was just the right amount of candy. It worked out really well. So it was fun. It was a good time.
So when it comes to out there at Rapid City, is the community involved with the event center? Is that like their only source of entertainment, or what's the thing there?
It really is. And the really cool thing about this city for us is it's not a big concert city. You put on this big of an arena. It seats 10, 11,000 people. We had 4,500, 5,000 people in there on Saturday night, still looked half empty, right? So you take a look at that, and then they can't fill a Jelly Roll concert. Every other place filled Jelly Roll. They didn't sell it out here. So it's not a big concert town. It's a big event town. They love their circle track. They love Caleb's event here in Rapid City in the summertime. They love the stock show in the summertime. They want interactive events. So it is the perfect storm for us here in Rapid City. Amazing facility, better than any facility I've walked through. More helpful staff and a community that can't. I got to, like the mayor was standing on our dirt talking about bringing this event to town one morning. And I'm like, somebody goes, hey, the mayor's in on your dirt. I'm like, what? I'm like, he even told me. He's like, yeah, the mayor's in there. I'm like, shut up. So I went in there. I'm like, oh, sure as heck. The whole TV crews, everybody's here. The mayor's here. So, I mean, it's the city wants this event. I mean, they wrote us a big, long letter thanking us for bringing this to their town, and we can't wait to get you back. And so the city really rolled out the red carpet. I mean, they're doing all kinds of studies for us. How much did we spend at restaurants? How much did we spend in hotels? Where can we do better? Can we get discounts from restaurants to get people on the different side of town? So, I mean, it's really a lot of people working together to make this event great.
So what percent of the people in the stands was from Rapid City?
Not very many. But it surprised us too, though. So when we used to do Blizzard Bash, we would track the people coming out. And it was 70% of the people that were in the stadium came from more than 7 hours away. I would say we were at about that same number here. But Saturday night had a bunch of locals there. They got to experience it. And where we messed up was we thought we were going to have a qualifying event. We didn't have enough drivers for a national event, a qualifying event. And so we had to move qualifying up, but we'd already printed all the tickets with a 4 o'clock start time. Well, no locals can come at 4 o'clock. And so we started the event on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 4 o'clock. Saturday night started at 6 o'clock. Places got a ton more people in it. So, but now we're tailoring the whole event for 6 o'clock starts, 3-hour shows, get out of there, go to dinner, and be done with it. So it's as much entertainment as it is derby now. So that's what we want is great, fast action, the team on team, all the way to the finish. And this is something we haven't even announced anywhere yet, Scotty. We'll announce it here first is compacts, bone stock, everything will be team on team all the way to the end next year. And so it's going to be the same bracket format. Politics are gone on the winning side. And so that's the cool thing. So
for your guys, so that's for the Weld compact class, correct?
It'll be on the compacts. That will be on bone stock. So compacts will be an 8-man or an 8-team heat or an 8-team bracket, and the bone stock will be 8 teams, and the qualifying will be 8 teams. National say 16, and they'll be one-on-one all the way to the end.
So one thing about your event that is very different from a lot of other events is because you guys don't really run filler classes like one and dones. What is the thinking behind doing all other team classes?
Yep. So what we do is we want a true team show. We want a true national championship. I want to know what the best compact team is in the country. I want to know the best bone stock team. I got all kinds of singles events. And so the goal is to take the teams, move them to March. We keep the singles out here in November. That's when we'll get two true national champions in every class, because you're going to have a team national champion and you're going to have a singles national champion. We ran a singles filler class, one every night, but yeah, it should be full of singles events at one event. In my opinion, it should be all team event at the other one, and it's 2 complete national championship events with criteria to get there.
So do you think this year for Gold Rush the qualifying side will fill?
Yes.
So going from that, what was your guys' thinking with running heads up down to the very end?
It wasn't my idea. Somebody put it out on Facebook, and all of us promoters were kind of watching it. I jumped in on it. I sent him a message and said, hey, we good to run this idea? Because this is a fantastic idea. Now we had to massage the backside. And so I took to Facebook on his thread. I don't even remember who it was, and I apologize, but I would love to give whoever it was the credit of it. But it was, I asked Facebook, okay, so how would you figure out the backside? What do I do with the backside of this thing? So we massaged it just a little bit more, but for the most part, we talk about Facebook and all the tough stuff that comes off Facebook. That was an idea that came from Facebook. And I mean, Tim was on there, I was on there, we were all watching it. And I just said, man, I got nothing to lose. Let's try it. And so what I didn't expect, Scotty, was the toughest night of Blizzard Bash is Thursday night. The reason it's the toughest night is it's one-on-one, right? It's one-on-one. There's nobody to blame there except for yourselves for losing. When you get to the finals, They can blame it on politics. They can blame it on whatever. They were odd man out. They got whatever, right? You can't do that one-on-one for the whole week. So what I didn't expect was all the emotion as we got closer to the finals, like that semifinals round. The emotion was crazy. And so I just didn't expect it. How much in a first year show, you're going, God, I hope people just take this first year show even serious, And it felt like a national championship. That Friday night heats you could cut the tension in that building with a knife. It was amazing to watch those semifinals. The finals were awesome, but just to want to get into that heat. I mean, there's $100,000 on the line, and 75,000 of it comes down to one heat. And so to watch that and people trying to get into that heat was pretty cool.
So when it got to the feed, before the event even started, when you were looking at the drivers list, did you see RPM Redemption bringing it home?
Honestly, no. I did. I knew they would be a good team, and I knew that they were going to be there. And I'd watched Derek and those guys drive a bunch. Ethan Beamer beat our wheels off in Valentine one weekend. I mean, I've seen those guys drive a lot. But I would say if I was betting my house, I wouldn't have bet them to win. I'd have bet them to be pretty well up there. But it was fun to watch them work through the bracket. They worked so well as a team through that bracket that, I mean, they ran great together. If they didn't have radios in those cars, I'd be amazed because, man, they all knew where each other was all the time. And they kept heads on swivels. 2 or 3 of them did get caught chasing one car. That's where a lot of guys get, 2 people come in on a hit and both of them get stuffed in there. That changes the whole heat. And so they ran well. And, even Derek said, wouldn't it be crazy if we drove a few of these cars out after the feature? And a few of them drove out after the feature.
So I have Cody Newth on Snapchat, and when I added him, it was a while back. We were going back and forth, making fun of each other. He called me famous. I said, I'm not famous. I'm like, you're famous. Somebody's like, wow, you're a gangster. You want to run it down to the end? I'm like, hey, you're cool. Can I buy you a hot dog in the Grand? That's my level of fame. And I told him before he went out, I said, if you guys go out there and win this, I'll buy you a hot dog at Blizzard Bash. Thankfully, he didn't go to Blizzard Bash because I didn't have to buy a hot dog.
Well, you can come to Gold Rush next year and you can get him his hot dog.
Well, I probably will have to. So when you saw that driver's list as the promoter, what is one of the things that were going through your head?
We went and recruited a lot of those drivers. And so we wanted the best of the best here. And were there some teams we didn't get? Absolutely. And they're amazing teams still. Glad for them. Some of them won at Blizzard Bash. I mean, just great guys. But when I seen, some of the teams that hadn't ran in a while coming back out, some of the teams that we did get, and knowing the level of car build that was going to be there was awesome. And we knew it was going to be awesome. And so that's what excited us the most was we may not have got every team we wanted, and we split the teams pretty well between us and Blizzard Bash. But to see the teams that we got, we were really happy with what we got because everybody could have said, you know what, we'll watch you the first year. And, that was what one of the drivers told me. And when I come back in, I said, God, I was venting to somebody at 3 a.m. going, gosh, I think I just lost another team. That emotion that we talked about, we didn't. But it was just everybody had a lot of emotion that night. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And he goes, don't worry. There's about 12 of us sitting in the stands trying to figure out how to get into this show. So it was good to hear that kind of stuff because, I mean, we take a lot of it serious. I mean, we were out there talking to drivers at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, what can we do better? Where did we mess up? Where did we do? We take that seriously. I went and hung out in the TSL tent. I never do that. But my kids had this show and they were doing a great job. So I got to just go listen to the drivers. Hey, what do you guys want to see? So I did a lot more of that this year than I've ever done. So
one of the things I was wondering is, so when you're a promoter, and you're putting on the show and you're seeing the builds that are coming to your show and they're the best in the country, how does that make you feel? Like, how does that make you a little worried going to the show, or what goes through your mind when you see those insane builds?
It makes us step our show up. We covered every detail of that show for hours, weeks, and months. I mean, we worked on that show for, like I said, 2 years. I mean, the amount of time Nicole spends on every video, making sure that it's going to look perfect on the deal. She did every graphic in the arena, all of that stuff. Because what we want to do is we know if the drivers are going to spend that much time on a build, we want it to look perfect when they pull in the arena. I want the atmosphere in that arena to be like nothing they've ever driven into. I don't want a county fair indoors. I want the best production show they can get. I want the lights to be right. I mean, we test different colors of lights. We test different spots for the spotlight. We go different angles for the cameras. I mean, we tried everything this year. On different nights, we tried different stuff. Going, there's the formula right there. Now let's just keep doing that year after year. So, I mean, lighting the UD on fire at Whiskey City, I botched it 2 or 3 times. This time, I think I dumped a whole gallon of crap on the track, had a bonfire because I was like, that sucker is going to light. And so, I mean, getting things right like that for the drivers, because when those drivers pull in and that hair raises up on the back of their neck and they feel that they can feel the excitement pounding through the car and it's louder than their car is, and they tell you afterwards, man, I've never felt anything like that before. That's what they're after. When Buddy asks the guys, what's it like to drive through the tunnel at Blizzard Bash? We spent a lot of time building that up. How do we build up that atmosphere so that when somebody drives through that tunnel at either show, they feel like that it's the only place to be at that time?
So is that why basically that the idea of the tunnel, pulling through the tunnel? Because like even that's basically one of my goals in derbying still is to pull through one of those tunnels. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the indoor arena of it, do you think that makes the show able to be bigger than a regular outdoor arena, or do you think it holds it back at all?
No, what it does is it gives us a production value I can't do outdoors. I can't put your face up on it was so fun at Gold Rush because guys, I would tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm going to tell you when you're live on the screen, make sure you smile. And it was cool to watch them watch their face come up, and they were live up there, and their headshot was off to the right-hand side. All their information, their hometown, they see all that before they drive on the track. I make sure to stop them so that they appreciate it. Hey, take a look at that scoreboard. This is all about you. And so that's something I can't give outdoors. Outdoors, we can do a lot of cool stuff, and we don't have to worry about the smoke. I don't have to worry about none of that. But, man, I'm telling you what, on that note, the ventilation at Gold Rush was insanely good. They have a jet engine that sits up on top of the building. It sucks the deal. All the smoke goes out through a jet engine. And I mean, it's loud though. You can't hardly hear the microphone inside when they start that thing up. In fact, for the Brady thing, we had to have them turn it off. And so it is just a good deal. But yeah, no, seeing the drivers pulling that through that tunnel. In fact, when we're looking at facilities, it's one of the biggest things I do. Okay, show me where the cars are going to enter from, because I have to walk it to make sure that it's going to give what we want. We've walked away from facilities that you just pop out on. Well, that's not what we want. We want something where they're going to come up on the floor and feel like, hey, everybody's watching me right now.
So give the driver that feeling of wow, basically. The feeling that will just sell itself in a way.
Absolutely. The show sells itself. Again, and that's what we want is if we make a mistake or two, the show needs to be bigger than the text. The show needs to be, now we need to do our best job we can. Don't get me wrong. I ride everybody really, really hard to make a good show. I mean, but you and I were laughing tonight about, being on time, right? And before we came on tonight, I said, if our show starts late, it's probably because I'm laying dead somewhere out back, because it's something we take a ton of pride in is I don't want to start late. I don't want anybody sitting at home at 7:02, 7:04, 7:05 going, why isn't the show starting? I mean, we take a lot of pride in that stuff. So yeah, it's a cool atmosphere.
So let's read some of the chats real quick. Could you ever see yourself doing a duo team class?
Oh, stinking Tom Russell. Man, I tell you what, I definitely want to do a big shout out to Tom out in Idaho. Man, that guy drives hard. I love having Tom at our shows. I would say we could definitely think about it, but I think for this next year, it's still a duo singles class. I think that'd be really cool to pull off. Even if it was a 2-man team show with duos, would be really cool to do. So yeah, it's something we can definitely take a look at. And again, the duo class, we did it for the first time at Blizzard Bash. It wasn't my idea. The Wyzorek family from Kansas, they come up and they're like, hey, we got an idea for you. What do you think of one person running the steering wheel and one person running the brake and the gas pedal? I'm like, Oh, that's a really cool idea. Let's try it. Next year at Blizzard Bash or next year at Capital Carnage, I don't know where we ran it first. But yeah, it was all their idea. It wasn't our idea. They just came up with a really cool idea. And yeah, sure, let's try it. So yeah, we ran the first one of those and it was a cool idea.
So did that affect your insurance at all? Because I can't imagine that. Really?
So you got to realize something with insurance. The drivers aren't covered by the insurance. And so that's what the waiver is for, is the drivers are basically taking their own hands, basically their own lives into their own hands. So when you sign that waiver, you're now basically covering yourself. The insurance is for the fans. And so all of the insurance covers the fans and all of that kind of stuff. Now they want to know age of the drivers and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of stuff affects it. But, a youth class affects it and stuff like that. But as far as how many people we put in a car, no. But again, in 20 some years, I'm not even going to say it. We don't have a lot of insurance problems, like none. So I don't want them, never had them. And there's only a couple companies in the whole country that write high risk insurance.
So this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's an important thing to address. So do you think that there's a lack of competition among drivers, like a lack of drivers that want to go out there to Gold Rush, to Blizzard Bash, and lay it all out on the line against the best of the best? Do you think there's a lack of that in a way?
I think there's some of that, but not. I think drivers want the competition. I think drivers want to have the competition. I think drivers want to compete against the best to show that they are the best. That's the great thing about these shows is now in the summertime, I think they're all calling each other at county fairs going, hey, where are you going? I'll go to this other one, because that's where they're picking up their money, right? They're going in trying to win these county fairs, trying to win these smaller shows. And I think then they're probably avoiding each other a little bit. But I think when it comes to these big deals, I think the competition's there. And I think you take a look at some of the biggest names in the country. I don't care. You can name any of them. They've either run Blizzard Bash, Gold Rush, Metal Mayhem, Bash for Cash. I mean, they're hunting the competition. So these guys, they may not do it every show. They're going to go run their small ones to get their paydays. But when we got to invite the guys from Utah, man, they were so excited. And they said, we don't build like this, but boy, we're going to next year. And so it is just cool to see that side of it too. So I think there's a good level of competition there, and I think it's just going to continue to get better.
So when you have drivers from every aspect of every part of the country, what is the main difference between the drivers from out east than compared to the drivers from out in like Utah?
So if you take a look at, and again, I'm probably going to get some enemies on this one. If you take a look at like an Ohio and go east and west, the builds change drastically. Ohio is kind of your kicker class, all that kind of stuff, crazy builds. I mean, to see what our Ohio driver brought this year, there weren't a lot of cars don't like that, right? Brandon Myers pulls in and everybody's like, holy crap, where's that all thread going to? So take a look at that. Now you get out to Utah and it gets, their full cradles aren't allowed. None of that stuff is allowed out there. But I'm telling you what, it's coming faster than people want. And those drivers are starting to demand it because they want to compete. They want to come to a Gold Rush and know that somebody pulls in from Ohio, Pennsylvania, wherever, they're going to compete no problem. You take a look at the drivers at Metal Mayhem set. They're all from Ohio, Illinois, Indiana. They come in and there's a lot of cars built like them now. You'd have done that 5 years ago, those boys would have come in completely overbuilt compared to everybody out here. So you're seeing Facebook's helped everybody catch up. The internet's helped everybody catch up. Now, the sad thing is it's cut a lot of learning experiences off. I had to learn the hard way growing up. A lot of kids had to learn the hard way. You can cut a lot of corners now, which kind of sucks. But it also builds a lot of competitive cars in a short amount of time.
I think Facebook, what do you think? Do you think Facebook has helped or hurt the Derby community?
Both. Yep, you'd have never built a Blizzard Bash in the past. Look how long Metal Mayhem took to build. I mean, it took forever for Charlie and Tori and all those guys to build Metal Mayhem because just word of mouth took so long to get out there. Now I can announce a show. TJ or one of those guys from the East Coast can announce a show. Frankie announces a show. I have all his details in 3 minutes. You know how long that would have taken us 20 years ago? I would have never heard about it. And so I think that part, it's helped us, but it's definitely hurt just as much because, I mean, you get a lot of people who like to sit at home and they're all critics. And the bad thing is why we sold our company. This is the biggest thing that people don't know. Why we sold our company in 2017 is because I thought Facebook was the majority. One thing I figured out, Facebook's the 5% squeaky wheels. There's a lot of good people on there, but the 5% squeaky wheels that love to hear themselves talk, if you listen to them, they will run you out of the sport. If you don't listen to them, you want to keep an eye on them because there's a lot of good stuff in there. You take a look through all the comments tonight, a lot of great comments, a couple that, you can take or leave or whatever, but there's a lot of great stuff there. But it's that if you listen to the 5%, that's what I told my kids the time they were little. You listen to the 5%, they'll run you out of the sport because most of them don't drive a lot of cars. They all have an opinion and they all have a vested interest somewhere. So again, I think it's been very good and very tough on the sport.
I completely agree. Like this past year, when it comes to making content for social media and stuff like that, the amount of like hate and just nonsense that I got for it, I was just like, you know what? We're done, boys. We'll see you guys in the future. But then you don't realize it until you go back to it and you realize the impact you have on people,
Yep. What's the message I sent you? I sent you a message that said, hey man, if you want to do this podcast thing, go for it. You've got it. And and the biggest thing was after we sold, the 95% spoke up. What are you doing? You just ruined the show, whether this and that. And nothing against Tim and those guys. Everybody was comfortable with us. But again, I thought everybody hated us. It wasn't everybody. It was a small sect of people that were definitely unhappy with us. So again, I think it's good and bad. But you gotta have thick skin if you're gonna put yourself out there.
When you guys deal with that, you guys just basically don't even look at it.
We look at it, we read it, but we don't hardly ever comment. Because again, all we're doing is perpetuating it when we comment. And again, if it's a valid deal, we'll message a lot of people and be like, hey, understand you're upset, give us a call. But if it's just ragging on us, like the night of the Topeka comment, right? Or even bigger the night before with We Crash not getting our job done on the pay-per-view side. We were reading them all, and my daughter's like, Dad. But at the end of the day, we can only do what we can do, and it's our job to fix it. Read them, make yourself better, fix it, and move on. But
I agree with that. I think
Gold Rush dates were, Scotty, you mind if I give out Gold Rush dates for next year?
Go ahead.
So Gold Rush dates for next year are October 30th, 31st, 1st, and 2nd of November. So those are the dates for next year. So we're going to be announcing all that this weekend. Nicole's got everything ready to announce. So we're going to get all that announced out there. I think hotels go on sale March 1st, registration's February 1st. So we'll be getting classes and everything out there.
Awesome. If you guys ever need a way to get the word out or podcast to go on, we're always here for you guys.
Oh man, we will be, bud. I think you're doing great stuff, man. And that's a big thing is just keep your head up and keep doing what you're doing because the information you've gotten out in 2 weeks is fantastic. So, we got a podcast out there, but I love watching what you're doing. And like I told you in a message that we'll support you all the way. So anything you need, all you got to do is holler at us.
Yep. You too, man. Thank you. Let's see. We've already been on here for an hour and 47 minutes. The time does indeed fly.
It does.
So let me change that.
Brandon didn't like all my paint, apparently. Brandon said there's more people painting on his car in Tech Line than he could even talk to. So we've heard you. I got it. We've got it.
So how do you guys, when it comes to your guys' inspection, how do you guys regulate who spray paints and who doesn't?
Yep. So I leave all that to Chris nowadays. And so what he does is he did a really good job because what we were having at like Pecatonica and some of those shows where the inspectors were just kind of following each other around the car. And I was like, okay, now we have just kind of this circle thing going on here. This isn't going to work. So we really broke up the cars really well at Gold Rush. The tough thing is you got 3 or 4 inspectors on the top side. One's doing the trunk, one's doing the inside, one's doing the front, the doghouse. And so what we were finding was those guys would just start painting in their areas before communicating it with the drivers. Well, they got way better as the day went on. But, you're taking a bunch of people that don't work together a lot. They're all very good at what they do, but it takes them about a day to get into a rhythm of communication. So who's going to talk to the driver? How's that going to go? All of that stuff. I think they'll just continue to get better at it. But Chris handles all that. And you know what? There's no way I'd want to take it on in Gold Rush. But I think the crew he put together was a really good crew, and I think they did a really good job. And did they miss stuff? Of course. We miss it at every show. This is what I try to explain to people. You got to remember, when I'm building a Crown Vic and I'm going to take it to wherever, Greeley, Colorado, and I'm going to take it out there and I'm going to wreck that car, I'm going to spend 4 hours putting my pedals in. Why? Because they may not be legit and they're going to support the boxes and they're going to do this and they're going to do that and all this stuff. You got 30 minutes to catch it all. If I got 5 months in a car and everything's done strategically, those poor techs have 30 minutes to catch it all. And so do they catch a lot of it? Yes. Is there going to be some stuff that gets missed? Sure there is. So I think it's going to be, good things as these techs start working together even more across these promoters, because Josh may see something way different than Nick King sees, that Chris sees, that Brad out in Utah sees. So I think as these guys all work together, or Joker or whomever, as these guys all work together, and I think as we can get these crews working together, and that's the big thing for Wheelman next year. I'll do a big shout out to some of the guys down in Missouri. They want to come up and make a show down there that's a Wheelman qualifier, and Junior Cardwell says, hey, what if I come tech for you and I bring Chris down to me? To me, that's huge. Hey, if you want to get into promoting, let's do that. And so we'll help anybody that can. So being able to do some of those things are just huge for us. So
I get you. I think when it comes to inspections, for me at least, the most important things in my eyes, at least, is communication and respect. I'm going to share a story that I've never been this mad inside of a tech line. I built a Toyota Solara convertible. I put a roof on it, welded it, basically overdid everything. I'm from Ohio. What do you expect? I don't know why they're mad about it.
Stay in Ohio.
So I go down there, and it was for a team show, and they start one of the techs just starts spray painting. I freak out, okay? Because in my mind, if you're spray painting this, that means I have to cut. So he's spray painting the entire body, everything, and I am freaking out. I'm telling him to draw sexual objects down the side of the car. I'm telling him to do all this stuff. And then and then he finally tells me, he's like, you don't have to cut any of this. I'm just marking this for the other inspectors. I lost my mind. What? I don't know.
If we paint, it's to cut. If we start painting all over yours, Scotty, I'm just telling you, you're cutting it all.
Well, I guess hopefully Brandon brought an extra set of torches, because I'll probably have to borrow them.
You boys just trailer out together. We'll cut you both up.
So when it comes to inspections, do you think that it's important to have techs that have built the cars that they're inspecting?
100%. 100%. That's why we have to have a good mixture of people it's why you'll hardly ever see Chris in the same car. He's built wagons. We've built a ton of Cadillacs, Crown Vics, everything. I push him to build a different car every time. So then when he gets into a car, he says, hey, I've built that. I've done this. I've done that. He's pushed the gray area on all these different cars. And so we used to go, even when we were at Blizzard Bash, you bring the Imperials back, that changes a lot of stuff, right? A lot of these guys, I'll mention, Scotty, you haven't built very many Imperials. And so a lot of these younger guys have not built Imperials before. So we had to go find techs who had built them. I started answering a lot of questions because that's where I grew up, was in the Imperial wagon days. So that's the biggest thing is I don't care how many cars somebody's driven. That means nothing to me. I want to know what they've built, how competitive were they, and if they know what they're looking for. And really, you'll know it just by talking through it with a set of rules. If there's been guys that we've talked through a set of rules on and went, yeah, you're not a very good fit for us. No, you were lost in the whole mix of things. But you know what? Some of the best cheaters make the best techs. I mean, it is what it is. And then we look for them. And they got to be able to communicate with the driver. They got to stay respectful. I don't care what that driver says. If you say they draw sexual objects on my car and go pound sand, my guys cannot they can't care. It has just got to be one of those, hey, we hear you. Now let's just keep working together. And so they've got to have a cool head. And that was always my problem, is I would escalate with the driver, or Chris, he's just level-headed most of the time.
I think inspection, especially, it draws that same energy on the track. Like, you're here, everything's already nervous, tensions are already high, and then it's just basically a ticking time bomb in a way.
Yep. Oh yeah. And again, they've gotten themselves so worked up by the time they get to the door because the word's already passed along. They're cutting this, and this, and they're cutting this, and this, and they're going, man, I can argue better than that person can. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So when they get up there, they're already wound up. And it's just like, oh, here we go. But a lot of our guys have ran enough of our shows that really our tech hasn't changed a lot. I mean, we don't load anybody anymore. Everybody's got the right to fix. You may not like the fix. You may be cutting the top of a frame rail off, but you have the right to fix. And so that was before. If you hit anything in a frame rail, you ground down metal. I mean, we loaded you just like that. And so, but guys came too far for that. I mean, if we'll work with them, they work with us. And yeah, I don't think anybody loaded up and went home at Gold Rush. None that I heard of, anyways. There might have been one. I take that back. There might have been one bone stock car, but I think that was it.
So going from, you mentioned the Imperials. When you guys had Blizzard Bash, what was your guys' reasoning for not allowing Imperials to run?
We avoided 03s and Imperials as long as we could, just for the fact that the perception is that they're too hard. Then when we brought them back, it was because the show had gotten big enough that if we lost one or two teams because of it, it wouldn't kill the show. When we first started out, if we would have lost two or three teams, that show was not going to function very well. And so we have to cater to the majority. That's no 03s, no wagons. Then we kind of brought the 03s back in, super limited. Then we brought in the Imperials. And so that's kind of what we did. Is as the show grew, it allowed us to get a little bit better, broader selection of cars.
Looking at it now, do you think being able to run pretty much every type of car any type of car that you would like to, do you think that helps the show in a lot of ways?
Absolutely. I think it's awesome. Yeah, because again, they may go grab a car that goes, hey, I'm going to stump the Tex with this one. Great. Let's bring it out. I mean, it's great to see those because every car's got their weaknesses. Every car's got their strengths. There's no car that's ever been that's built that's indestructible. In my time frame, Imperials were indestructible. You got your hands on an Imperial, crap, you're going to drive it all summer long. We've seen now, it doesn't. A 9802 can knock a sub out of an Imperial. That did not happen back in the day. If you hit a Chevy sedan with an Imperial, that Chevy sedan was going to crumple every time. Now with all the pressure and all the everything that we're using and all the parts, man, most cars are competitive.
Do you think the amount of aftermarket support and the amount of basically that is basically, or if you try to look for it, do you think that's helped and pushed the sport forward in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I do. And I think centralized vendors. I mean, you probably don't even remember when we started a company called Derby Parts before NLR, and it was derbyparts.com. Because back in the day, to buy parts from anybody, you had to go PayPal them money, hope the parts got here, all that kind of stuff. So we just brought in one central place. NLR took it to a whole different level, and John and those guys have done awesome. But, I mean, you take a look at the vendors out there now. They're so much easier to buy from. I don't care if it's, I mean, there's so many great vendors. I could start and I just keep going all night, but there's so many great vendors out there. They're trustworthy. You still get your bad apples in there, but for the most part, the big guys are trustworthy. They built a good brand. They built a good deal, and they actually make it easier for a younger guy or a guy who can't build all of his own stuff to keep going. But yet somebody that builds a lot of their stuff in the shop, they can compete no problem. So, I mean, it gives a nice mixture. Back in our time, you had to build everything. Everything had to be built.
So, a question just caught my eye. What was it? Why do you allow 4 old irons on a team but not 403s?
We do at Gold Rush. At Gold Rush, we allow 403s. Yep.
Okay.
And the reason we did was because, again, every car's got their weaknesses, and I haven't seen very many 03s win the Derby because of the steering. Now, do they put a hell of a hurting on when they're going? Absolutely. But again, they're not winning a lot of these shows. But boy, they're fun to have on a team. But so there was a couple teams there that had all 03s.
So even from that, when it comes to 03s and stuff like that, I saw the climbing guy, Gage Sumner. I saw his name pop up. How do you think bumper heights and climbing and all that, how do you think that has affected Demolition Derby since it's been introduced?
You know, I think if you fix one, you got to fix the other. You bring the fronts down a little bit, you bring the backs up, get them to sit like an actual car again. I think the sport's going to be. I don't think it's going to go backwards. I think the trick will be to get them to last 4 days, and because if we rip the back ends of them off in the first night, what do you do with them when they're going to keep dumping out of the back seat? So I think there's got to be a good mixture there, but I think the fronts got ridiculous at Blizzard Bash about 16, 17. Right when we were selling it, they were getting ridiculous, 16, 17. And really that was a mess I kind of handed Tim. It was high bumpers and low backs. And so then they got the hump plates even longer. And so it just perpetuated the problems, thinking we're helping the drivers, and really we're hurting the drivers and the sport. So I think the fronts, we brought them down at Gold Rush a little bit, but we never brought the backs up very much. So I think now we'll level them out just a little bit more and let the cars get wrecked a little bit more. But again, now hopefully we have cars left on Saturday night.
So as a promoter, pretty much the entire thing across the country, it seems nowadays, is everybody's trying to have that wedged rear end. Mm-hmm. From the promoter standpoint, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they don't bother us. It's the wedge rear end doesn't bother us. It's what it does to the steering of the other cars. And if they're going to roll in, I think they're great. I think if they're going to roll in with height, I think the wedge rear end isn't a problem at all because it makes the car predictable. If you can't wedge the car, it's not going to be predictable. You can guess it's going to whale tail, but nobody wants that anyways because then the car's garbage. So I think the wedge trunk is fine. I think we just have to work with the bumper height. But I don't think the wedge is a problem. It's not bad to inspect. If you have a couple inspection holes in there, you get in there with a flashlight. And really, by tapping on most of the sheet metal, it should sound like sheet metal and not like a bottom of a 55-gallon drum. So, it's, so we don't have a major problem.
I get you. Because around here, especially at the Bash this past year, bumper height was the number one thing they're enforcing. But the thing that I still don't understand is how do you determine the bumper height on a wagon compared to the bumper height on a sedan?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's easier when they're fresh than when they're used. Once they're used, it gets really tough. So I think, what I did appreciate about Blizzard Bash this year is they kept checking the bumper height throughout the week. We did not. We checked it the one time, and then once they were used, they were used. So I think that was something that Blizzard Bash did really well this year, is kept checking the bumper height throughout the event. I believe that's what they did. And so I think that's great. And on a wagon, you just got to check the bottom of the frame rail because there is no bumper on the back of a wagon. And even if you put one there, it's not where the bumper goes. So you're not putting it in the stock location because most of that sheet metal is gone that actually holds the bumper on the back of a wagon. So check the bottom of the frame rail where the springs or wherever's at, where it mounts up. That's where the bumper height has got to be on a wagon.
And then when it comes to wagons, what are your thoughts on how they cut them off?
I think they're ruining wagons, personally. I think it was kind of a fad that was there for a while. They take all the support out of them. Now, I think once you sedagin them, they're hard. I think, but if you cut them off fresh, I think it puts too much pressure on those frame rails. That little bit of cushion back there that comes from the sheet metal is really helpful, and it actually gives that frame a little bit of wiggle room around it. In fact, our favorite way of doing it is mounting a bumper to the actual frame rail. We can't do it at our shows, but shows that don't require a stock location for the back bumper, you mount the bumper right to the end of the frame rails and then leave all that cushion behind that. You got a foot of sheet metal just banging into a bumper and then into a frame rail. That thing will go for a long time. But when you cut all that off and you just expose frame rails with no support, that's a lot of pressure on frame rails. I think it looks cool, and then you got to watch the roof for safety deals. The roof can't stick out to the back. It's got to be, we make it go halfway in because that last thing I need that is in a driver's window.
So you mentioned putting the bumper on the back of the frames of wagons. Do you guys don't allow that at Gold Rush?
I don't know. I don't know on that one, Scotty. I don't know. I'd have to ask Chris. We never did in the past. We might have this year. I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the notes if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if we did or not. I don't believe we did, but I'm not sure. So I stay as far away from tech as I can, unless there's a major problem.
So who's the head tech that I'm going to have to get on here?
Chris,
you're coming on. Message me. We're setting it up.
Yep, he'll do it.
Awesome. Well, Sam, we hit that 2-hour mark, and I got to get to the gym at 5 in the morning tomorrow, so I got to get to bed here soon. You got anything else you want to say before we get off here?
No, I left Florida at 2:00 this morning, my friend. I appreciate it, man. You're doing a great job. Anything you need, you holler at us anytime. We'd love to have you out at Gold Rush, doing a podcast from Gold Rush next year, and you let me know, man. I'll get you out here. So we sure appreciate it. What you're doing for the sport is great. Just keep doing what you're doing, and I hope you keep with it and keep growing with it.
Awesome. You too, man. Thank you. It means a lot.
Absolutely.
You got anything else to promote? Ultimate Derby or
And then
anything like that?
we'll have Monona County. We're taking over that show. So we'll have Monona County over in Ottawa, Iowa. All those details will be coming out here in the next couple of weeks. That will be a qualifier for Wheelman. All the Wheelman qualifiers will be coming out. They're going to be all the way from Utah. I'm trying to get one of the Pennsylvania boys to step up. So Scotty, get on one of those guys. I need a qualifier out there. So give me a good qualifier out there. So we're trying to find an East Coast one. Everybody else is pretty well signed up and going to make it work. So Wheelman's going to be awesome next year. Cool shows. So that's going to be fun to get all that announced. So nope, Gold Rush. It's going to be one for the ages. I promise.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sam. I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you guys all for tuning in and watching. We shall see you guys tomorrow with Tim Clark to end the week. See you. Bye. Let's see.